Hello everyone, Mike Starks with Remax Town & Country here, bringing you the 2025 first quarter real estate market report for Gillespie County and Fredericksburg. And I really must admit I was a little surprised that the first quarter of this year was a little busier than it was. I guess I've been lucky. I've been running around like crazy since the first of the year, so when I actually ran the numbers, I really was surprised to see that we're actually still a little bit down from last year. So with that said, let's just go straight to the data. Let's start by talking about all of the transactions in Gillespie County from January 1st to March 30th of this year, and we'll compare that to the same time frame as last year. So for 2025, we'd sold about $59,525,000 worth of real estate in Gillespie County. And in 2024, we'd sold $61,829,000 for the same time period. So that puts us behind about 3.72% from last year in total dollar sales. And we're probably even a little farther behind in the number of individual properties that have sold. For the first quarter of 2025, we sold 88 individual properties compared to 104 individual properties in 2024. So that's a drop of 15.38%. And like I said, I'm really surprised because I really thought the beginning of this year would be much busier. And we are much busier from the standpoint of the phone is ringing a lot more. There's a lot more people out there looking at properties. It just hasn't all translated into actual sales yet. And so we're just now talking about the third quarter, but if we break it down, January and February were indeed down from the previous year, but we actually saw a little bit of an uptick in March. In March, we had a 3.4% increase in the total dollar transactions over the previous year's March. So, I'm still optimistic this spring and summer are going to be strong for real estate in the Hill Country. And, I really hope so because we've got a lot of good inventory out there waiting for buyers now. So let's jump to single family homes in the city limits. So in the city limits from January 1st to March 30th of 2025, we've sold $16,275,000 worth of homes. You compare that to $18,831,000 in 2024. That's a drop of 13.57%. And that represents 37 individual home sales in 2025 and 35 individual home sales in 2024. So that's also down 11.42%. However, even with the overall volume being on the low end, as usual, Fredericksburg's market's holding its own when it comes to values. So for the first quarter of 2025, the average home price in the city limits was $525,021, and that equates to $273.38 per foot. You compare that to the end of last year, where the average price of a home in town was $274.32 per foot. So really very little change in the average price of a home. And I really expect to see that number to start appreciating a little bit again, maybe kind of slightly by the end of summer once we burn through some of this existing inventory. Let's see, then the short-term rental market. That kind of continues to struggle a bit. For the first quarter of 2025, we've sold $5,100,000 worth of real estate or STRs in the city limits. And in 2024, we'd sold $9,594,000 worth of STRs in the city limits. So that's a drop of like 46.7% in the total dollar sales. And we've also only sold 8 short-term rentals in the first 3 months of this year. Compare that to 2024, we'd sold 16 short-term rentals in the first 3 months, so that's a drop of 50%. And, I've talked about this a lot, but, back in 21, 22, we just had too many folks looking to get into the STR business, and as a result, we've just kind of spread the number of consumer choices out so much that the less unique B&Bs are just seeing their income soften, and subsequently a lot of those guys are trying to sell. And right now we've got 63 STRs in the city limits on the market. And again, so far we've only sold 8 of those this year. However, much like the single family residential homes, we're lacking the volume in sales, but that really hasn't affected the pricing too much. We ended 2024 with the sales price of an STR at $666,973. For the first quarter of 2025, we're at $638,375. And of course, as we know, the more accurate metric of a sales price is the price per foot. And here we actually saw a little bit of an increase this year. 2025, currently the average sold price of a STR is $473.39 per foot, compared to the end of 2024, where the sales price was $442.19 per foot. So that's a pretty hefty increase on the average price per foot. But, with only 8 transactions so far this year, that's a pretty limited data set to make any broad assumptions about where prices are headed. And personally, I still see where some of these less unique STRs will likely end up turning back into single-family residential homes. And as these transactions come through, it'll make the overall STR sales price appear to be down even a little more this year, I think. But that said, the successful STRs that are doing well or unique, close to Main Street, that sort of thing, I think we'll probably still see a little bit of increase in their prices this year, when and if they decide to sell. Moving on to land sales, we're seeing about equal activity as last year, but on smaller tracts. In 2024 and in 2025, the first quarter, we're actually equal. We've actually sold 22 individual raw land tracts in both years. But in 2024, that equated to 564 acres, and this year that's only equated to 225 acres. So same number of individual transactions, but a drop of about 60% in the total number of acres sold, which of course shows up in the overall dollar sales as well. For 2025's first quarter, we've sold $8,775,000 worth of raw land in Gillespie County. In 2024, the first quarter, we'd sold $11,668,000. So that's a decrease of 24.53% in the total dollars sold in Gillespie County. But again, we're blessed to be in where we are with overall values remaining strong. So here's just the breakdown of the average price per acre by category. So for the first quarter of 2025, the average price per acre for a 1 to 5 acre tract was $59,947 per acre. A 6 to 7 acre tract is currently trading at $34,874. I'm sorry, $34,874. 11 to 25 acres, current average is $37,984 per acre. But so far for 2025, we haven't sold any raw land tracts larger than 25 acres. So if you go on my website and you're looking at the average price per acre for those larger tracts, those are prices where we ended at 2024 with the average price. And I guess to finish up, let's just talk about commercial for a minute. I was expecting commercial to have a pretty strong start this year, and so far that seems to be proving out, with $9,660,000 in total sales for the first quarter of 2025, compared to only $2,219,000 in 2024. So that's an increase of like 335% in total dollar sales. And for better or worse, we've still got a lot of commercial activity in town right now. New hotels, new food establishments, new retail centers. So just a lot happening. So I guess that's kind of it for the first quarter report. Overall sales volume remains a little sluggish, but prices are holding. Currently still expecting a pretty strong year. So we'll see how that plays out in the next quarter. And also, if you're watching my reports regularly, I'd love if you'd send me any questions. My market reports are usually just me spitting out some data and some numbers, so I'd love to incorporate a few questions that maybe would make it a little more entertaining as well. So if you have any questions, you can just email me at mike@mikestarks.com. If you're on my site, I'm sure you can find my email somewhere. It's mikestarks.com. And I'm also going to be doing I've been doing quarter reports on Jam Radio, so maybe I'll answer your question on the radio as well. But anyway, so all these stats can be found on my site at mikestarks.com under the information tab. And again, if you have any questions, write me at mike@mikestarks.com. Thanks for watching.